My girlfriend's mom called the cops on me, all because I refused to raise another man's baby. And then, I never thought my life would turn into something out of a nightmare. But here I am, sitting in the dark, staring at my girlfriend as she crumbles before my eyes, and I have no idea how to fix this. It's been 2 months since it happened. 2 months since Hannah was attacked. It happened in a park near her apartment, somewhere she'd walked 100 times before. She didn't want to report it. The moment I suggested calling the police, she shook her head so violently I thought she might pass out. I tried again, told her that we needed to, that this guy had to be caught, but she just curled into herself, shaking, whispering, "No, no, no." I couldn't force her, so I just stayed. She stopped talking for a while after that. I mean, she spoke, but not really. Her words were hollow, like she wasn't actually there. I stayed with her every night, watching her fade away into something unrecognizable. She barely ate. She barely slept. And when she did, she'd wake up screaming, clutching her chest, gasping for air. I told myself I could handle this. I had to handle this. I loved her. I wasn't going to walk away just because things got hard. So I stayed. I held her when she broke down. I reminded her to eat. I sat beside her when she stared at the walls for hours, lost in whatever horror was replaying in her head. I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd find a way out of this together. Then she took a pregnancy test. I still remember the way the room went completely silent when we saw the result. My ears were ringing. My chest felt like it had been punched, and for a second, I thought I was going to be sick. Positive. She wasn't even crying. She just stared. I don't even think she was breathing. I was. Definitely breathing too fast. Too hard. Because there was only one possibility, and we both knew it. I'd been out of the country for work when she was attacked. 2 months overseas. Back just in time for my world to implode. I hadn't touched her since before I left, and now there was no denying the truth. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. I even suggested we take another test, just to be sure, but she didn't move. "It's his," she whispered. The words barely made a sound, but they shattered everything. I didn't know what to say. What do you even say in a moment like that? At some point, I must have told her that we'd figure it out, that we'd get through this. But I was lying, because I already knew what I needed her to do. She needed to end the pregnancy. We went to therapy together after that. Not because she wanted to, because I wanted to, because I needed someone to tell her that carrying this child would destroy her, that it wasn't hers, that it wasn't something she had to do. But therapy wasn't some magical cure-all. It didn't make things easier. It didn't stop her from spiraling. I spent every day watching her break apart, unable to do a damn thing to stop it. Then she told me she decided on an abortion. She didn't say it with relief. She didn't say it with sadness. She just said it, like she was reading from a script, detached and emotionless. I didn't push. I figured she was still processing, but at least we were on the same page. At least we could finally move forward. Then she talked to her mother, and everything changed. Her mother is one of those people who weaponizes faith. The kind that sees everything in black and white, no in-between, no context, no trauma, no nuance, just sin and righteousness, good and evil. Hannah went over there to tell her what had happened. She wanted comfort, support. Instead, she got an ultimatum. Her mother told her that abortion was a mortal sin, that it wasn't the baby's fault what happened, that if she went through with it, she'd never be able to forgive herself. And then came the real blow, the one that made sure Hannah wouldn't go through with it. "If you do this, you are no longer my daughter." She told me all of this with red, swollen eyes, sitting on the floor of my apartment like a broken doll. "I can't do it," she whispered. I felt something inside me snap. "So you're keeping it?" She nodded. I took a deep breath, trying to stop the anger from taking over, trying to be patient, but my mind was already racing ahead, trying to picture what life would look like if she did this. Would I be able to look at that child and not see him? Would she? Would I be able to raise another man's kid, knowing how it was conceived? Knowing how much pain it had already caused? No. The answer was no. "If you do this, I'm leaving." She flinched like I'd hit her. She begged me to stay, cried so hard she could barely breathe. She told me she needed me, but I couldn't back down. "I won't raise this baby, Hannah." If you keep it, I walk. That's my choice. She kept crying, pleading, but I didn't move. I didn't let myself feel, because I knew if I stayed, it would break me. And so, I walked out the door. And for the first time since the attack, I finally felt like I could breathe. I thought walking away was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but nothing prepared me for what came next. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I had to protect myself, that I couldn't be in a situation where every single day I'd be reminded of what happened to her in the worst way possible. And I believed that for about 48 hours. Then the guilt crept in. Not the wrongdoing kind of guilt, but the what if she can't handle this alone kind. I kept picturing her sitting in that apartment, lost in her own head, spiraling. And I hated myself for not being there. But what was I supposed to do? Come back and pretend I'd suddenly changed my mind? That I could live with this? I couldn't. But that didn't stop me from staring at my phone for hours, wondering if she'd call. Then she did. When my phone rang, I felt a surge of relief. But the second I heard her voice, that relief turned to dread. "Luke," she whispered. I swallowed. "I'm here." She sniffled. "I don't know what to do." I ran a hand down my face, squeezing my eyes shut. "Hannah, my mom," she interrupted, voice breaking. "She's all I have left." I stayed silent. She said if I do it, I'm dead to her. That I'll never see my brother again. That my dad. She let out a shaky breath. That my dad wouldn't want me in heaven. I felt my jaw tighten. I hated talking about her father, mostly because I knew what he was really like. "Hannah, your dad was a drunk, a violent one, and suddenly his opinion matters." She inhaled sharply. "Luke, don't." "No." I cut her off. "I'm done pretending your mom is some saint. She doesn't care about what you need, Hannah. She cares about what fits into her neat little world. She's my mother, and I was supposed to be your partner." Silence. She sniffled. "Are you saying I should do it?" I exhaled slowly. "I'm saying you shouldn't let her control your life." Her breathing hitched. Then she hung up. I didn't hear from her after that. No texts, no calls, nothing. I thought about reaching out. 100 times. I picked up my phone, typed something, deleted it. What was I even supposed to say? "Hey, just checking in. Did you let your mom ruin your life yet?" So I waited. 3 days. Then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. "Hannah, I made my choice." My stomach twisted. No explanation. No details. Just those 4 words. I typed out a response, then deleted it. Did I even want to know? Did I need to? Before I could decide, another text came through. "Hannah, can I see you?" And just like that, I was out the door. She was waiting for me outside her apartment. Her arms were wrapped around herself, and she looked different, lighter. "I'm doing it," she said before I even spoke. I stopped a few feet away. "You're sure?" She nodded. "I called a clinic. It's scheduled in 3 weeks." I studied her face, searching for hesitation. Of course, there was some. But there was something else too. Relief? She swallowed. "I just needed you to know that I chose this. Not because of you. Not because of my mom. But because it's what's best for me." I let out a slow breath. "Hannah, I'm not asking you to come back." She shook her head. "I just needed you to know." I clenched my jaw. "I never wanted to leave." She looked up at me, eyes full of unshed tears. "But you would've." I didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. I should have known her mother wouldn't go down quietly. A week later, Hannah called me again. This time, completely panicked. She blocked me. She blurted out the second I answered. I frowned. "Wait, what?" "My mom. She blocked me." I told her I was going through with it, and now, nothing. I tried calling, but I'm blocked. I ran a hand down my face. "Jesus Christ." "She wasn't bluffing," Hannah whispered. "She really meant it." I clenched my teeth. "Then maybe you're better off." She sucked in a breath, like I'd slapped her. "She just cut me off, Luke." Her voice was trembling. "She's gone." I sighed. I know it hurts." There was a long pause. Then, quietly, "But I still have you, right?" And just like that, everything inside me cracked wide open. I closed my eyes. "Yeah, Hannah. You still have me. I thought that was the end of it, that she'd made her choice, and now we could move forward. But I should have known her mother wasn't finished. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, 2 police officers stood there, serious expressions on their faces. My stomach sank. Luke, one of them asked. Yeah. We need to speak with Hannah. I froze. Why? The officer's face remained neutral. We received a report that she may be in danger. My pulse skyrocketed. I knew where this was coming from. From who? I demanded. The officer didn't answer. Can we come in? I turned to call for Hannah, my heart racing. She appeared in the hallway, confusion written all over her face. The moment she saw the cops, she went pale. One of them pulled her aside, speaking in hushed tones. I was led to my bedroom by the other officer, who started asking me questions. How long has Hannah been staying here? Has she had contact with anyone else? Has she expressed any fear for her safety? The implication was clear. They were trying to figure out if I was hurting her. My blood boiled. After what felt like an eternity, they left. Hannah was visibly shaken. When I asked her what they said, she whispered. They asked if I was being held against my will. I felt like I was going to explode. Her mother did this. I turned to Hannah, jaw clenched. If she does anything like this again, I swear to God, I'll press charges. She just stared at me, eyes filled with tears. She didn't say it, but I could see it written all over her face. She was terrified of what her mother would do next. I should have known her mother wouldn't stop. The police visit was just the beginning. The moment Hannah told her she was going through with the abortion, it was like a war had been declared. A silent one at first. Just the cold shoulder, the blocking, the emotional exile. But then Maggie, her holy and righteous mother, decided to escalate. I should have been prepared. I wasn't. After the officers left, Hannah collapsed onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. She actually did it, she whispered. She really called the cops on us. I sat beside her, fists clenched, trying to keep my anger in check. She told them I might be in danger. She continued, voice shaking. That you might be hurting me. I swore under my breath. She's trying to ruin my life. Hannah looked at me with wide, guilty eyes. I didn't think she'd go this far. I let out a bitter laugh. Hannah, she thinks you're murdering a child. In her head, she's saving you. From me, from yourself, from eternal damnation, or whatever the hell she believes. She flinched at my words. I just wanted her to understand, she whispered. I thought, maybe if I explained it right, she'd see why I have to do this. I shook my head. She doesn't care why, Hannah. She only cares about control. She was quiet for a long time. Then, hesitantly, what if she really never speaks to me again? I sighed. Then you'll still have me. She didn't say anything, but she rested her head against my shoulder. I thought maybe that was the worst of it. I thought we could move past this, let things settle, and focus on what mattered. I was wrong. Sunday afternoon, Hannah decided to call her mom. Not to fight, not to beg, just to try one last time to ask her to stop interfering, to stop hurting her. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. I was in the kitchen when I heard the sobs, the kind that made my stomach drop before I even knew what was wrong. I rushed into the living room and found her sitting on the floor, still holding her phone, her whole body shaking. I didn't even hesitate. I plucked the phone from her hand. Hello? I said, voice sharp. Silence for half a second. Then, you're a disgrace, Maggie spat through the speaker. I smiled coldly. How Jesus of you. Then I hung up. Hannah's sobs only got worse. I sank down next to her, wrapping my arms around her as she clutched my shirt like it was the only thing keeping her together. She said, her voice broke. She said if I go through with it, I'll never see her again. Or my brother. Or my dad in heaven. I tensed. Your dad? She nodded miserably. She said he'd be ashamed of me. I exhaled slowly, forcing down my rage. Hannah, your dad was an abusive alcoholic? She swallowed hard. I know. But she made it sound like if I do this, I'll be alone forever. I pulled her closer. That's not true. She didn't respond. So I leaned in, whispering against her hair. If you're going to hell, save me a seat. We'll be nice and toasty together. That got a small, broken laugh. And for the first time in days, she held me back. We spent the next week just existing, taking things day by day. We went on drives with no destination. We cooked together, even when neither of us had an appetite. We held each other at night, waiting for the nightmares to pass. For the first time in a long time, I thought maybe we'd be okay. And then, Saturday happened. There was a knock at the door. I got up to answer it, expecting a delivery. Instead, I found two police officers standing outside. My heart stopped. One of them, a tall guy with sharp features, glanced down at his notepad. Luke. I swallowed hard. Yeah. We need to speak with Hannah. I felt her presence behind me before I even turned around. Can I ask why? I said, my voice carefully neutral. The officer's expression didn't change. We received a report about her well-being. My jaw clenched. Maggie. I stepped aside to let them in. Hannah stood frozen in the hallway, eyes wide. Miss, one officer said gently, can we have a word? She nodded stiffly. The officers split up, one taking her into the living room, the other pulling me aside into my bedroom. That's when the interrogation started. How long has Hannah been staying here? Has she had contact with anyone else? Does she ever seem afraid of you? I answered each question carefully, keeping my voice steady. But my blood was boiling. Finally, I asked, who reported this? The officer just shook his head. We can't disclose that. I let out a cold laugh. Right. After about 10 minutes, they let us go. The second the door closed, Hannah burst into tears. She told them I was being held against my will. I felt my fist clench. I knew it. She's trying to ruin us, Hannah whispered, wiping her face. She's trying to make you look like a monster. I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temples. If she does this again, I swear to God, I'll press charges. Hannah flinched. Luke, don't. No. Enough. I'm not letting her and ruin my life, Hannah. She swallowed hard. She's still my mom. I stared at her. And what does that mean, exactly? That she gets to destroy us with no consequences? Tears welled up in her eyes again. I just want her to stop. I sighed, forcing myself to calm down. She was scared. And for as much as I hated Maggie, Hannah still loved her. I pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. We'll figure this out, I murmured. She nodded against my chest. But I could tell she didn't believe me. And honestly, neither did I. The final blow came when Maggie called again. Hannah and I had made a deal. If her mother called, she wouldn't answer. Either she'd hang up or pass me the phone. But this time, she hesitated. And before she could stop herself, she answered. The moment she heard her mother's voice, she froze. She looked at me, panic written all over her face, and wordlessly handed me the phone. I braced myself. What? Maggie's voice was cold. Did she go through with it? I smiled slightly. The abortion went perfectly. The rage on the other end of the line was immediate. She unleashed a stream of curses, calling me everything under the sun. I let her go off for a full minute, barely suppressing my smirk. When she finally paused for breath, I said, "How Christian of you." Then I hung up. Hannah didn't find it funny. She just sat there, staring at nothing. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't sure if we'd actually won. There was no winning in a situation like this. There was only survival. And even that felt impossible some days. Hannah had cut her mother off. Or rather, her mother had cut her off. The second she confirmed the abortion was happening, Maggie had slammed the door shut, locking her daughter out of her life like she was some kind of disgrace. I kept telling Hannah that this was for the best, that her mother had never truly cared about her, only about control. But it didn't make it hurt any less. No matter how much pain Maggie had caused, Hannah still wanted her mother to love her. And now? She had no family left. Just me. The weeks leading up to the abortion, Hannah didn't talk much about it. She went through the motions, made the appointment, spoke with a counselor, did all the necessary steps. But she wasn't there. She was moving on autopilot, like she was afraid that if she stopped to think, she might fall apart completely. I was terrified she'd back out, that Maggie's voice would creep back in and convince her she was making some unforgivable mistake. So I stayed close. I made sure she wasn't alone for too long. Some nights, she still woke up crying. Other nights, she barely slept at all. I didn't push her to talk. I just held her when she needed it and gave her space when she didn't. I thought I was handling everything well. I thought I was being strong for her. But the truth? I was furious. Not at her. Never at her. At the whole damn situation. At the fact that she was suffering for something that was never her fault. At her mother for choosing religion over her own daughter. At myself for not being able to take away her pain. I wanted to scream at the world for what it had done to her. Instead, I stayed quiet. Because she needed calm, not more chaos. We barely spoke that morning. She was quiet, withdrawn, clutching my hand a little too tightly as we walked into the clinic. She had to go in alone. That was the rule. So I sat in the waiting room, staring at the floor, trying to block out the sound of other people coming and going. I didn't know how long it took. An hour? 2? When she finally walked out, she looked exhausted, pale. But there was something else too. Relief? I stood immediately. Are you okay? She nodded, her voice hoarse. Yeah, I want to go home. So we did. She cried the moment we got through the door. Not the restrained, silent tears I'd seen before. No, this was everything she'd been holding in for months, pouring out all at once. I held her as she sobbed into my chest, fingers clutching my shirt like she was afraid to let go. It's over, she whispered between gasps. It's finally over. And it was. The pregnancy. The constant, suffocating reminder. The fear of what her life would become if she carried it to term. For the first time in months, she could breathe. I ran my fingers through her hair, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. You're free, Hannah. She nodded, curling into me, letting out a shaky exhale. For the first time, she believed it. We took the entire week off work. We needed space, time to just be. No drama, no stress, no outside noise. Just us. One night, we went camping. It rained, of course, because the universe has a sense of humor. But instead of ruining things, it made the night feel cozy. We sat inside the tent, listening to the rain, wrapped up in blankets. At one point, Hannah stared up at the fabric of the tent and whispered, "Life is so weird." I smiled. Yeah. She nodded. A month ago, I felt like my entire world was ending. And now, it's like I can see again. I reached over, squeezing her hand. You survived, Hannah. She turned her head, looking at me with a soft, tired smile. Yeah, I guess I did. She wasn't magically healed. That kind of trauma doesn't just disappear. But for the first time, she wasn't drowning in it. She was swimming to the surface. And I was right there beside her. A few days after the abortion, Maggie called. Hannah and I had an agreement. If her mother ever tried to contact her, she wouldn't answer. Either she'd hang up or give the phone to me. This time, she froze. Before she could think, she answered out of instinct. The second she heard her mother's voice, her face paled. She looked at me, panicked, and silently handed me the phone. I sighed, putting it to my ear. What? Maggie's voice was sharp. Did she go through with it? I smiled slightly. The abortion went perfectly. The rage on the other end of the line was instant. You bastard, she spat. You're a manipulative, evil. I tuned her out, letting her rant. I could practically hear the foam forming at the corners of her mouth. When she finally ran out of breath, I said, "How Christian of you." Then I hung up. Hannah let out a shaky exhale, rubbing her temples. She's never going to forgive me. I sat down beside her. And what? You were supposed to suffer for the rest of your life just to keep her happy? She bit her lip. I sighed. Hannah, she made her choice. Now you get to live your life without her hanging over you. She looked down, nodding slowly. Yeah, I guess you're right. But I could tell it still hurt. The next few weeks were quiet. No more phone calls. No more police at our door. No more threats of eternal damnation. For the first time in what felt like forever, we had peace. And for the first time since all of this started, I let myself believe that we were going to be okay. Hannah was healing, slowly but surely. and I was right there with her. No matter what came next, we had each other, and that was enough. Silence is a strange thing. For months, our lives had been consumed by chaos. Screaming phone calls, panic attacks, police visits. Now, there was nothing. Maggie was gone. No more threats. No more ultimatums. No more forcing Hannah to choose between her own survival and her mother's approval. The quiet should have been peaceful, but for Hannah, it was just another kind of loss. She didn't say it outright, but I could see it. She was mourning. Not the baby. Not the decision. She was mourning the idea of a mother who could have supported her but didn't. The weeks after the abortion were a blur. We settled into something almost normal. We went back to work, got back into routines. But there was an undercurrent of something unspoken between us. Hannah was different, lighter in some ways, but also fragile. She was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. One night, she was scrolling through her phone, absently flicking through old messages, when she suddenly whispered, "Do you think she'll ever reach out?" I put my book down. "Maggie?" She nodded, still staring at her screen. "She's never ignored me for this long." I didn't know how to answer, because, honestly, I didn't think she would. Not unless she could manipulate Hannah back into her control. But I couldn't say that. Not when Hannah was already hurting. So instead, I said, "If she does, it'll be when she needs something." Hannah swallowed, looking down. "Yeah, probably." She didn't bring it up again. We took a trip. Nothing fancy, just a weekend away from everything. We rented a cabin near a lake, just the two of us. It was the first time in months that I saw Hannah breathe. We went on hikes. We made terrible coffee over a fire. We lay under the stars, saying nothing, just existing. And one night, as we sat wrapped in a blanket by the lake, she finally said it. "I feel like myself again." I turned to her. "Yeah." She nodded. I didn't think I ever would. I squeezed her hand. "You are yourself, Hannah. You never stopped being." She let out a small laugh. I don't know, for a while, I felt like I was just surviving. Like I wasn't me anymore. I knew what she meant. I pulled her closer. "Well, I'm glad you're back." She rested her head against my shoulder. "Me too." We were home for less than a week when Maggie finally broke her silence. It was a letter. No dramatic phone calls this time. No threats. Just a handwritten envelope sitting in Hannah's mailbox. I found it first, brought it inside, held it out to her without a word. Hannah stared at it like it was radioactive. Then, slowly, she opened it. I watched her eyes move across the page, her lips pressing tighter and tighter together. Then she set it down on the table and walked away. I picked it up. "Hannah, you've made your choice, and now I have to live with mine. I will never understand how you could do this, how you could turn your back on everything I taught you. You let that man corrupt you. You let him lead you to murder your own child. But I suppose none of that matters now. I hope you enjoy your life with him. I hope it was all worth it, because you are no longer my daughter. Maggie." I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and tossed it in the trash. Hannah was sitting on the couch, staring at the floor. I sat beside her, not saying anything. After a while, she whispered, "I thought it would hurt more." I turned to her. She let out a breath. "I spent my whole life trying to make her proud. And now? I just feel tired." I reached for her hand. "She never deserved you, Hannah." She nodded slowly. "I think I finally believe that." She leaned into me. And just like that, she let her mother go. Maggie didn't try again. No more letters. No messages. Just nothing. And that was fine. Because Hannah was healing. And I was still here. We started making plans. Not big ones. Just small, simple things. Weekend getaways. Trying new restaurants. Slowly piecing our lives back together. One night, we sat on our tiny balcony, watching the city lights. Hannah turned to me and asked, "Do you think we'll ever have kids?" The question caught me off guard. I looked at her carefully. "Do you want kids?" She exhaled, looking up at the sky. "I don't know. I used to think I did. Now, I just want to live my life without anyone telling me what I should do." I smiled. "That's a good place to start." She smiled back. "Yeah, I think so too." For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something to be afraid of. It just felt like ours.